Oh, I love. You have big ambitions for As Ever.
I do.
Hello everyone, another week, another inane podcast featuring not one, but two extremely out of touch, privileged Nepo women who spend an hour and a half gushing over each other under the guise of female empowerment and feminism. This bracelet's making a noise, let me just get rid of it. Let me give you some stats and some facts. I like that. According to the U.S. Small Business Administration Office of Advocacy, women in the U.S. owned more than 12 million businesses and employ over 10.7 million workers. They've also made total sales amounting to $2.1 trillion. According to the 2023 Annual Business Survey, women-owned businesses, which were around 1.3 million or 22.3%, had an estimated 2.1 trillion in receipts, 11.4 million employees, and $508.5 billion in annual payroll. Now for some Meghan stats and facts. Her most recent Netflix offering with Love Meghan Season 1 averaged at 36% for critic reviews and 33% for audience reviews, so a fail. We know that even in terms of view count, we've covered the numbers in a previous video, the show really didn't do nearly as well as people would have expected. She's had her Spotify contract unceremoniously canceled in 2023 due to being
the grifters.
But if you tune into this podcast that we're covering today, she'll have you believe that she supported Lemonada because it's a female-owned and female-driven business.
I was so fortunate to find Lemonada. I loved that it was a female-founded company that was doing podcasts and the women running it, incredible.
Speaking of her flopcast, that's where her trademark disasters started. Remember when she tried to trademark the word archetypes and failed abysmally because there were other companies already trading under that name? You would have thought someone with Meghan's resources and intelligence would have done prior research before settling on that name, but no. That was just the beginning of a pattern of a lack of research and failed trademarks. In fact, even her As Ever trademark is still pending. And in this episode, she talks about wanting to branch out into fashion. Well, good luck with that, seeing as it's already taken. And she's already had to withdraw that whole category because it was challenged. And we can't talk about trademark issues without the ultimate disaster, American Riviera Orchard, which yet again had a failed trademark application that resulted in the entire name being scrapped altogether. We've also heard about her disastrous As Ever launch, which saw people purchasing things that were already sold out, and so she had to issue apologies and refunds. And then of course the reviews that have come in from otherwise very forgiving, normally pro Meghan Markle platforms, such as The Cut and Yahoo News. But even they couldn't sugarcoat the failure of what she still calls jam, even though she herself would be quick to remind us that it's not jam, it's fruit spread.
And you could fill it with jam, you could do chocolate, anything you like. Of course, funny enough, you can't call this jam.
So why on earth would Meghan, of all the 12 plus million women who own and run successful businesses, keyword being successful, be picked as a guest on this podcast, a podcast called Aspire, no less. Aspire to what? Gold digging? I could think of only two options, really. A, either these high-powered CEO hashtag girl bosses who run these podcasts are idiots, or B, they have zero scruples and are simply in it for the clicks. That was the symbol for money, but clicks equals money, so I just had a shortcut. And based on what I've learned on this Emma Grede character, and yes, apparently that's how you pronounce it, according to an interview she and her husband gave The Cut 2 years ago. But if you ask me, it has an unfortunate pronunciation in the English language, whether it's greed or greedy. No offense to any Swedes out there. But the latter option seems to be closer to the truth. In which case, I hate to break it to you, Emma, but Meghan Markle isn't exactly the click generator that she once was. I mean, don't believe me, just get a load of her view count. This from a woman who once attracted billions of eyeballs just to watch her get married. Not to mention the Oprah interview, which also broke records. And the comments really don't fare any better. So who is this Emma Grede character anyway? I mean, she's got a tiny channel. Her podcast is brand new. I'd personally never heard of her before, but I'm not someone who's very switched on and attuned to pop culture. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But I decided to look into her. We're going to get into her bio very briefly just to get an idea of who she is and how she made her money. I'll give you 2 guesses how. Nepotism. But for starters, this is what she had to say about her new podcast. If you're coming on with a book to sell or a PR story to tell, that's not my bag. I'm really choosing people who are mostly just going to be really freaking honest about their journey, really honest about what it took, and not kind of indulging any toxic positivity, which I'm completely allergic to. And yet, in this episode with Meghan, because I'm not going to watch any of the other episodes, this happens.
Just be authentic. Did you see my baby mama dance?
Well, that's what I kind of want to see from you. Like, I want to see that happiness and that honesty and that, like, I don't give a fuck.
I don't know. I mean, she's doing me a bamboozle. Does anyone remember those memes from 2016, 2017? All the Doge memes? To be a young kid at university again. So that was just an appetizer. You know me, I like to sink my teeth into a topic. And so I did some research. And that research very quickly divulged that much like the rest of Meghan's Oprah worshipping,
I'm obsessed with Oprah, so if you could tell her for me, please.
Oh, I'll tell her.
Yeah, thank you.
beige loving, gold digging posse, Mrs. Grede is apparently cut from the same cloth. I mean, what is it? Do they just have these people in a conveyor belt in a factory? I mean, when does the cloth run out? According to Forbes, Emma, who is a British citizen as far as I'm aware, she was born and raised in London, and her accent definitely gives that away, has been hailed one of America's richest self-made women. Now, if you know anything about Forbes, then you'd know they have no qualms with putting actual con artists, actual fraudsters on the cover of their magazines. It's actually kind of their full-time thing now. But of course, Emma's pitching that, and it's even on her bio on her YouTube channel. It's the first thing you see. However, is it true? I personally always find it incredibly fortuitous when a quote-unquote self-made woman suddenly starts a business or comes into money or a successful empire right around the time or maybe just after she meets a rich husband. You know where I'm going with this. And now look, I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke husband. In a nutshell, Emma Grede and her husband Jens Grede, who is a Swedish, what is he, a multimillionaire, if not a billionaire, are the power couple behind celebrity brands such as Skims with Kim Kardashian and Brady. I don't know what Brady is, but apparently it's good enough to be mentioned by Business Insider, so we'll roll with it. The European couple has co-founded 7 brands between them, and they've launched multiple brands, in particular with the Kardashian-Jenner family. His LinkedIn, I must say, is very sparse. He's not letting on all the things he has been involved with. And he's been involved with a lot. So I had to do some more digging. LinkedIn, fail. Jen started off working for an independent fashion magazine called Stockholm New and an interior design magazine called Wallpaper, which is where he met his longtime business partner, Eric Tortensen. In 2003, Jens and his partner launched a holding group called Saturday Group, and this company was later acquired for an undisclosed amount, but we're going to assume it's in the millions based on this couple's net worth. Now, Emma meets Jens in 2006, and at the time, she hadn't started anything. She was just an employee. She's basically a fashion school dropout, I think. She claims she interned at Gucci, and I'm going to assume she was a saleswoman at Gucci. Was it even Gucci? Basically, it was one of those designer stores. But she meets Jens in 2006 and they start dating in 2008. And after that, lo and behold, her husband and his partner become founding shareholders in her company, which she founded in 2008 when they started dating. Are you connecting the dots? Called Independent Talent Brand Worldwide, which is a talent management and entertaining marketing agency. Emma was the CEO until it too was acquired in 2018 for an undisclosed amount. Her husband Jens then went on to co-found the denim brand Frame. I actually used to have a pair of Frame jeans that I got rid of, ironically, in 2012. That's not when I got rid of the jeans, that's when they founded the company. In 2016, inspired by her husband, Emma pitched Kris Jenner at Paris Fashion Week. As you do, you know, when you're a nobody who came from nothing, you just happen to be invited to Paris Fashion Week and bump into the likes of Kris Jenner to pitch your business idea. But that meeting is what led to Emma co-founding Good American with Khloe Kardashian in 2016. In 2019, they started Skims with Kim Kardashian, and it's basically a snowball effect. Emma's background is a little bit muddled and confusing. She tells Business Insider that she grew up in East London with a single mom and 3 sisters, but then The Guardian says that her father was a BT engineer and her mother worked on the Swiss trading desk at Morgan Stanley. So I'm not sure about the whole, was she growing up in a single household or not? It's not really relevant. The only reason I'm bringing it up is to point out that her parents were quite well off. And so much like, if you remember the Bumble founder, Whitney, Emma pretty much had a head start in life, at least financially. But then she'd have you believe that she was a hustler and that she'd worked every job under the sun, crossing them out, you know, as she went on, knowing that that's not for her. And very tellingly, she completely omits to mention the critical year of 2008 when she started dating her future husband and started up her company. No, she'd have you believe she just happened to start it up herself because she's a hustler, don't you know? A self-made woman. So that's one similarity that she actually shares with Meghan that, you know, gets the antennas standing up. Now, to be fair, Jens himself appears to be a Nepo baby. He is the son of a film director and an artist. And that's not to say all film directors and artists are rich celebrities, but he was famous enough to have his own Wikipedia page. So popular enough, one would assume, to give Jens a head start in life. But then there's more. It actually gets worse. In an interview that she gave The Cut, the article starts off by talking about how Emma walks into a Skims warehouse and all the employees there literally stand up when she walks in, as though this were a military inspection. I'm military, and a high-ranking officer, or even a sergeant if you're still in training, and as I was, you just stand up to attention when a higher-ranking officer walks in. But, you know, in the military, that's the norm. That's just how we operate. But in a normal civilian situation, that really stood out to me. There's one more thing I really want to highlight, just to give you a very clear image of the kind of person this Emma is and how similar she is. When I say she's cut from the same cloth, it's like a conveyor belt of Meghan Markle types, I mean it. Listen to this. In their 40s and virtually wrinkle-free, with teeth so white they look blue, the Gredes sit on a couch across from me, near a photo of their 4 young children. Jens is sprawled, fidgeting with the boucle, occasionally checking his phone. He seems bored, especially next to Emma, who was perfectly poised with her arms and legs crossed, her face hoisted into a smile, her gaze trained on her husband with militant admiration. Isn't that the image of Meghan Markle? But it keeps going.
I don't think there's any value either in being so rehearsed and just having your talking points and just saying the thing. No, just talk.
She has a habit of responding to questions with an unrelated talking point.
I feel like there is no point in having rehearsed lines and a narrative that is like, fully, written out that isn't your own. You have to be authentic.
When I ask the Gredes about all the Skims media interest, she brings up her philanthropy work, then the importance of representation, then says, to answer your question, I went on Shark Tank because... And the question had nothing to do with Shark Tank. Her appearance as the first woman of color investor on the show, she claims, increased the diversity of applicants. And there's a lot more where that came from, by the way, because it seems that around late 2023, in the fall of 2023, the Gredes just came out of the woodworks and had this huge PR push. I do know that Emma is represented by WME, so I don't know if that's a strategy, and that's potentially the link between her and Meghan. But yeah, they were virtually unknowns and decided to just emerge into the public eye. I mean, you know, as narcissists tend to do, I guess. So, knowing everything we know about Emma, and I'm sure we've barely scratched the surface, is it any wonder that she, number one, invited the likes of Meghan on her podcast, and much like Jamie Two Names, spent, as I said, an hour and a half basically kissing her behind, and two, despite saying she doesn't want no PR, BS, and toxic positivity, permitted Meghan to espouse just that, non-stop, for an hour and a half. And what does Emma do? She just sits there, blindly agreeing with every falsehood Meghan uttered, and she uttered many. For instance, Meghan's comment about treating people with kindness.
Treat them with kindness. All of those relationships end up coming to fruition. You don't know when, but just like with life, relationships matter.
Or how about when she talked about her kids' clothes getting merched by other people, making her uncomfortable?
Maybe the surprise came in when anything that my children were wearing started to get monetized and affiliate sales and part of headlines and things. That's where it became a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, because it's only okay when she does it, right? And we've already covered the point about Meghan saying, oh, I'm with Lemonada because they're owned by women and not because Spotify booted my behind. But she goes on to pretend that her podcast did so well, people are virtually begging her for a second season, but she can't do it. She can't because she needs to focus on As Ever.
I love that there's so much excitement and desire for another season, but I need to focus on my business.
First of all, Meghan, I promise you, no one, or perhaps your, minority of sycophants, wants a second season of that inanity, that drivel. I clocked out after 2 episodes. I just couldn't. I couldn't sacrifice any more brain cells than I already had listening to that BS. And to her point of wanting to focus on As Ever, then why bother with an 8 to 9 episode podcast that no one even asked for, that you're not even qualified to make, in the sense that she's barely a female founder herself. She has no knowledge to impart, and clearly neither did her Nepo guests. So why start something when you had no intention of seeing it through, despite it being such a hit, such a success? It's really interesting. There have been numerous moments in this podcast where Meghan has led us into her warped narcissistic mind. This was only one example. So here she's letting us in on what she tells herself. When something fails, she tells herself, oh, well, I have no time to dedicate to that. That's why it's ending. Not because it's a flop, but because I've got bigger fish to fry. She does this again in a comment about her failed auditions.
Meaning it doesn't matter if you don't get that role. You might not be right for it. You might remind the director of an ex-girlfriend that broke his heart.
Now, she dresses it up a little, as Meghan tends to do, pretending that it's not about her. She's talking in the third person, when we can all safely assume that that's one of the many delusional reasons, justifications, self-soothing mechanisms that she employed whenever she failed an audition. It was never her fault. It was because maybe I'm so hot and I reminded the director of an ex who broke his heart. The implication being that the ex was incredible and she broke his heart, and it still hurts him. It hurts him so much that he can't cast this hot chick who reminds him of her. No way. No matter how brilliant of an actress she was. And on the topic of failure, Emma actually asks her about how she copes with it. What's her mentality around it? And yet again, Meghan confirms what we've all been saying for years now, which is that she doesn't fail.
I do not think about failing. No, that's not an option.
Failure is not an option. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what Elizabeth Holmes said about Theranos. Elizabeth had that same stubborn mentality when it came to Theranos, to the point where she was ready to defraud investors and innocent human beings, patients, just to see her mission through. And look where that got her. And then along the same vein, because nothing is ever Meghan's fault and everything she does is never a failure, Emma asks her,
I wonder if you could rewrite your public narrative from scratch. Is there anything that you would do differently?
Yes, I would ask people to tell the truth.
I mean, at this point, need I even say anything? I would ask people to say the truth. I mean, Meghan, we've been doing just that, and you've been trying to shut us down. But that's because we all know what she actually meant. She meant I would urge people to fall in line, fall down on one knee, worship me, and believe every word that comes out of my mouth as though it were the gospel. And Emma just takes it. Just like she took it when Meghan talked about finding her voice on social media and being able to share things on her own terms, when not 4 years ago, or maybe 5, she was sitting there, you know, when she was still, I suppose, covered in that mist of royalty in 2020, talking about how social media users are basically no different to users of illicit drugs.
You know, I have, for my own self-preservation, I have not been on social media for a very long time. I have a lot of concerns for people that have become obsessed with it. It's an addiction. People who are addicted to drugs are called users, and people who are on social media are called users.
And Emma, much like Jamie Two Names and Oprah and everybody else who laps up this woman because, I don't know, they want to be royal adjacent. She's barely a royal. Who are we kidding? Or maybe because, like I said, they're cut from the same cloth. They are so blind to her fakery because they're just as fake. You know, pot, meat, kettle. Why would they call each other out when they would just be exposing themselves? And that's the thing about these podcasts. That's why they do so poorly. That's why, whether it's this Aspire BS or Meghan's failed podcast, her second one in a row now, that's why we all come out of it learning nothing, because these are just vapid women who either came from wealth, married into it, or both, who just sit around stroking each other's egos on camera under the guise of illuminating us, enlightening us, educating us plebs, who should be lucky to even have the opportunity to have this little access. How magnanimous. Here's an idea for the Emmas and the Jamie Kern Limas and even the Meghans of the world. Remember when Meghan and Harry, when they first signed on to Spotify, remember how it was all about, oh, we want to give a voice to the voiceless, give unknown people a platform to share their inspiring stories. Yeah, what happened to that exactly? Why not interview just one of the 12+ million women who are currently running immensely successful businesses in the United States alone? You remember those stats I quoted you early in the video? Just pick one. I mean, never mind the fact that these women are probably incredibly busy because they're actually out there working hard. You know, things weren't handed to them on a silver or platinum platter, I should say. And so they probably barely have time to appear on a veneer, bronzer, wig-laden podcast. If I were famous and I had a platform that people actually paid attention to, then I would, without a doubt, if I were into that sort of thing, host non-celebrity, hardworking women who actually started at the bottom and worked their way to the top, because these women would actually have valuable information and life lessons to impart. That's what I would personally do with my platform if I cared about my audience, which I personally do. I'm sorry that, I don't have the resources and the clout that these women have to give you more value, but I try my best. However, what a waste of resources. All these women want to do is get dolled up in their whites and their beiges and their neutrals. Ironic, because I understand that I'm wearing neutrals myself today, but I'm usually colorful, and just gush about how incredible they are. And then they wonder why people don't like them and basically their shows are a flop. But hey, not all is wasted or lost, because if there's one thing that always comes out of these episodes, these podcasts, these interviews, it's confirmation, or perhaps a revelation for newcomers, of Meghan's hopelessness. The woman is a lost cause. I have a whole series called The Curse of Being a Narcissist, and how Meghan's own narcissism, like every other narcissist out there, will be and has been her own undoing. Namely, because as she confirms in this video, she'll never learn. No matter how many times she uses that new dumb term, learns.
But to be able to be really candid and vulnerable personally about my learns and stumbles along the way.
What on earth is learns? Are we seriously devolving that far back in the English language to be cool? You can't learn anything, Meghan, if you don't accept that failure is an inevitable part of life. It is, in fact, a necessary part of life in order to level up, to get better, to learn. But as long as she clings on to this mentality of hers of, I wouldn't change a thing. People should say the truth. I don't believe in failure. Then we know exactly why in the last 5 years, more now, actually, she hasn't gotten anywhere. In fact, she's only gone backwards. Miles and miles backwards. And that's all I have to say. I hope you guys appreciate that I tune into this BS for you, because that is the only reason I do it. Maybe a few prayers for my deceased brain cells. That would be very greatly appreciated. All right, that's it. Until next week, take care. Sometimes I do this and I'm just like, what is this? Have a great weekend. And I'll see you next week. I already said that. All right. Blabbing. Time to turn off the camera. Bye.